Play the music.
Hi, my name is Robby Burns. Welcome to my new podcast. If you're wondering what this podcast is all about, I don't really have a good answer to that yet. It's really an experiment. I think talking is a really natural way to discuss a lot of interests I have that are really complicated to write about. Specifically, music, technology, and how technology intersects with other young professionals who are trying to lessen the friction between themselves and being creative in their everyday work. In this first episode, I sit down with longtime friend Jon Tippens to talk about Apple's new streaming music service, Apple Music. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Jon.
Hey, Robby.
We're going to talk about PDFs.
Cool, man. Did you record that on your electric kit?
All of it was input on a MIDI controller.
That's how you...
Yeah.
Cool. Good for you, man.
The latency created sort of like a really behind the beat kind of feel.
I could hear it.
And I worked with it.
I thought maybe that you were really getting, working on that kind of the R&B stuff you've been working on.
Well, I was.
Yeah.
But then like the latency gave it more of that.
I wonder what Count Basie could do if he had latency on his side.
So much. We'll never get to know. Mm-hmm. So you think that I should keep that music, the opening of every episode?
Yeah.
Because my idea was...
If you're going to change it, you should retroactively change it all.
Well, my feeling was that every episode would have a different improvised... Because I kind of am just improvised that...
There's this incredible effect that you don't want to lose. This effect that once you are a regular listener to a single podcast, you come to not only expect that sound, but when you do hear it, it prepares you. It's like you have this ritual that triggers your body or something. Just like having the same place where you sleep at the same temperature triggers your body for sleep. It's just like you're ready and almost looking forward to that podcast, that brand, that sound.
I know that you're right, but. It was going to be so much fun for me to make a different style of music every episode. I'm thinking like every episode is like a new season of True Detective.
Right.
New theme song, new characters.
Wow.
New, that was my vision.
So this is season 2. We're in season 2 of True Detective right now.
Well, but it's really episode 2.
But then the intro music should be the same.
Right. Well, I hadn't even considered the idea of doing seasons of this show.
Because even True Detective has the same intro for every show. So if this is an episode, it's got to have that same intro.
Like I said, I know you're right.
Right. I'm trying to break your metaphor.
I understand.
I'm puckish like that.
It was hard enough for me to commit to a title. That's why it is my name plus friends. Right. Because that's the fewest amount of words that I could, get out there. And it's really like only one step removed from just calling this Robby Burns as the title, which is not...
Do you want to talk briefly just about why you were so mesmerized by the season 2 opening sequence for True Detective?
Yeah, I do want to talk about that now that you mention it. Okay, well, the cinematography and sort of art style to it is unbreakable. Like it worked so well the first season that they just ripped it, gave it a new tint.
Would you agree that was the most continuity we had between the 2 seasons, was the style of opening sequence?
No, I think there is a theme for me between the 2 seasons.
Okay, lay it on me.
Well, hold on. First, let me say, just intro. Speaking intro only.
Okay.
The song, it's like overproduced, but also underproduced at the same time.
Yeah.
So you have, sounds, timbres that can only be produced in the digital age.
Right.
But then you also have this like bare bones, like there's like stuff missing from it. You have like this bass line and this kick drum, and then this like, sort of deep, almost like Johnny Cash kind of voice singing. And then there's really not too much else to it. It just feels barren.
So what you just said was the most respectable thing, and this is the most respectable thing I could say within a vacuum of hellishness that I decry, but it was what you just described, that aesthetic. It was the most respectable thing I could say about the latest release gosh, I'm gonna forget his name. I don't wanna lose you now. I'm feeling right in the back of me.
Oh yeah, JT.
Yeah, that track had that aesthetic that you're talking about. It was, you could hear timbres in production you would only hear now, but at the same time there was this intentional kind of.
Do you know what it reminds me more of with JT is Sexy Back, because Sexy Back is just it's just all like drum loops and
right.
Like weird, like a bass line. It's got that same sort of feeling of like there's like nothing harmonic to it. There's no harmony to it. Like it's just like a repeating monotone, almost kind of beat with a almost like a pretty monotone melody too.
Yeah.
And nothing really giving it any sense of direction, but in a way that almost is like cold and dead, but I love it.
Huh. Yeah, yeah.
That's how I feel about the intro to True Detective season 2. It's just so cold. Like there's nothing driving it forward other than that kick drum.
Right.
It sounds like it's missing so much stuff, but it turns out.
But it works.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. So I thought you were going to talk more about the visuals. I didn't realize that the sonic stuff had that much of an influence on you.
I think it was visually. There's nothing to talk about. If you've already seen the first season, it's the same kind of thing. It's sort of like these silhouettes of characters of the show, but then there's like cinematography, sort of like plastered. What's the editing effect I'm looking for? Superimposed on the silhouette of scenes from the season. So
right.
like a dark alleyway or like like the interstate.
Right.
From like the point of view of a helicopter,
or in this like James Bond sort of way, the shape of a woman's body superimposed on the sea, and you can't tell which one you're seeing. Or
right,
something.
James Bond intro. That's a good way to. That's a good comparison there.
Yeah, they definitely took a lot of cues from that whole thing.
So if there's a theme that connects the two seasons, for me, the only thing that's there is that you have detectives. And they are working on a case. And at some point, there is a false ending to the case. There's a false close to the case, which then spurs on a jump in time.
Right.
And then we later find our same characters in a situation where they realize that the case was not really closed.
I see. And
for motivations that depend on their own personal storyline cause them to pursue the truth.
Hence the true detective.
They become true detectives.
Wow.
This sort of happens in both seasons.
Right.
I would say that, without spoiling anything, that in season 2, I think that the motivations of the characters are not quite as well. Maybe I need to rewatch the first season. I feel like the motivations of some of the characters in season 2 are not so much for the cracking the case, solving the mystery,
right,
as much as they are for other personal reasons.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that that's true of season 1, right? Because season 1 does spend so much time on the personal stuff that, I mean, what other reason does the show have for them continuing?
Yeah, I also a minor gripe with season 2. I'm not convinced that every character needed to be in it. In particular, I'm not convinced
no
that.
Kidding. There was like an abundance of characters,
which I'm okay with. They took a different, they told the story.
It's almost like
differently.
The writers and producers owed way too many people favors.
I wonder. Yeah, I'll say in particular, without giving away anything about his story, I think that the younger cop. I think that the story could have been told without him being a character at all.
In season 1 was so tightly woven, so well knitted, that there was no wasted space. There was no wasted characters, no wasted screen time, like nothing. It was just like a tight season, right? That's how I felt about season 1.
It was also a very different pacing. I think pacing is more the problem with like how tightly knit it is. Like, season 2 is a faster pace, and I think that's okay. But how they throw information at you and in what order they gave it to you, I think that it makes the first couple of episodes of season 2 come across as not necessarily static, but a little bit like you care a little bit less about it. It's like, I don't understand what's going on. I mean, I really did. I had to go online and read for the first 2 or 3 episodes of the season what was happening in the plot.
Sure.
And that was not as fun. Whereas first season is like just basically building the environment in which the killings are taking place.
Here's an interesting question. So, TV shows in our day and age. I mean, has anyone really pushed the envelope here and tried to expand what a TV show... I mean, now that I'm saying this, I know a few people have done kind of what I consider more gimmicky stuff, not like taking this seriously. I mean, we know that people watching TV today are going to be reading about the TV shows they really love on the internet. Why not make the TV show only one necessary element of many of the whole experience?
So we're not going to talk about PDF management
tonight. No, we
anymore.
can. I just wanted to throw that idea out there.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Someone's going to come up with it later. Yeah, someone's going to come up with that, and it's going to be something not entirely like TV. I don't know. I feel like that's the same question as like, why is the video game industry still succeeding with the same old basic model of here's a controller with physical input that you sit on a couch and hit like the Wii was this amazing success, but then the input model didn't like permanently leave a change in the gaming industry. You know, we still have controllers with buttons.
Right, and I'm not trying to take anything away from traditional TV media.
I just think that people are, no matter what kind of interesting experiences you offer, people are going to always want
the basic,
sit on the couch,
basic cable,
watch the story.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably true. But it would be interesting, sort of like, Choose Your Own Adventure was kind of fringe. Not everyone did it, but it was successful in its own right in a certain kind of way.
Well, the age of the internet is certainly the time to give Choose Your Own Adventure
another shot.
But see, I feel like the video game industry is really tackling this. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, they've tried.
You can play
a couple video games in particular have gone for the Choose Your Own Adventure. 5 endings.
Right, and they're primarily cinematic. Like, there's very little timing or action required on the part of the player. You're just playing a movie.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, interesting.
I mean, that's sort of like what reading a Choose Your Own Adventure is. You're playing a movie.
Right.
Because you're reading what happens. Anyway. PDF management.
Yes. This is a subject near and dear to our hearts.
Well,
my heart?
If our hearts are made of hate.
Well, and in the case of PDFs, they are. So in trying to connect, thread this topic to the general idea or philosophy behind having a podcast, technology is a theme, increasing productivity, and being critical of how it's used in the creative person's workplace are super important themes to me. And I have found that no matter what thing I've engaged in professionally, whether it be teaching or performing, like the PDF is the digital file type that is unavoidable, that is most flexible and relied upon to getting basic productivity done. And so I think we both agree and have talked before about our dissatisfaction with how they're managed in the modern day of, mobile devices and syncing. And,
on the tablet in particular.
Right. And so I thought we could talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you had something in mind, but like I would lay out on the table what I wanted a basic PDF management app to do. Before I even touched my first iPad, I had a pretty solid idea of what I thought a PDF management app should do. And many of these things still aren't done well today. So, number one, you should be able to edit freehand or with text. But let's just talk about freehand. You should be able to edit freehand. You should draw scribbles, whatever, write on your PDF almost as easily, if not as easily as it is to write on a piece of paper with a pencil. You shouldn't have to click 4 times to write a 5-worded sentence.
Okay, so there's a basic grievance. The user experience and interface in treating like we have nowadays the device that best replicates the piece of paper, the document, which is basically like a 9-inch or so sized metal square with a glass on it that is a window into what used to be paper. But the complaint is the act of scribbling on it takes too many clicks and taps.
Well, because many of the apps that I've used make it what I consider to be prohibitively difficult to just write a sentence or a comment. So you've got to click one button to sometimes 2 buttons to even begin writing. And then you've got to click one button again to go back into you're not writing anymore.
Right. Okay.
It's a hassle. I mean, because if you're going to be doing this a lot, it's going to double the amount of time it takes to do it.
Sure.
Anyway.
So here's I think grievance number 2. The fact that that PDFs and software used to manage PDFs tend to be a lot of different options, and they all work differently. And in the age of syncing, like actually, I think let me start this over. I think that what's tricky about PDFs is it is such a flexible file type that lots of different types of things are turned into PDFs.
Yeah.
For example, a book could be read in the form of a PDF.
Right.
A document that is intended to have someone sign it could be distributed in the form of a PDF. One of those two things is very different than the other in the physical world. A book is something that you typically turn the pages of, you read. It's, input only.
No, but you scribble and underline and highlight it too. I mean, I do.
I guess it's a little different than a document that you'd sign in that it's, I don't know, it's hard for me to not think of them as different types of media and therefore requiring either one flexible tool to rule them all or better separate individual tools to manage them. For example, I've determined that there's really no one place I can store my PDFs.
Yeah.
Part of my problem is with just where are these things? Are they syncing across all my devices, which is super important to me?
Right.
And where are they and why?
Right.
So, for example, where does a PDF that is a book go? For me, importing something like that into the Kindle app or the iBooks app,
sure,
to me,
that makes sense.
It's like if Kindle is where all my bookshelf, it's my digital bookshelf, then a PDF that is just a book should go in the Kindle app.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
What doesn't make perfect sense, is that the way that reading apps on tablets work are terrible at file management.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and just to use, since Kindle and iBooks, I assume, are two of the more popular ways people are going, iBooks doesn't sync anything that is not purchased on the iTunes store. So if you buy a book,
right,
it's synced. You highlight it, you take notes in it, they're synced. But if you import a PDF into the iBooks app, in 2015,
right,
it will not sync the file to your Mac.
Yeah, that's astonishing.
Outrageous. Kindle will do it, but they haven't gotten the fact yet that like the cloud and the device, like that abstraction is like they're like still treating this process like we're in 2007, where like you have a cloud, but you have to like push things from the cloud to respective devices rather than just basically having, that distinction.
Well, if there's any defense to be made for that, it's they're respecting people who, unlike you, don't max out the amount of local storage on their devices. Right? So if you have what's the lowest storage you can buy of an iPhone?
16 gigabytes.
Yeah, so if you have 16 gigabyte iPhone, you could imagine how much memory your Kindle will take up quickly. If you just start dragging your PDFs in there and it's automatically shooting them locally to your phone, it's going to be a problem, right? I think it's almost like they're having respect for your local storage space, but letting you choose what's on there.
Right, but at the expense that there is the compromise. is that you, rather than every device looking at books that are in the cloud or books that are local, they have like, they're treating it more like on Amazon's website, you can manage these things. And it's more like you can push them to those devices.
Right.
Which is a confusing metaphor because technically you own them. They're in the Amazon cloud. They're technically available to you everywhere.
Right.
And so what this results in is duplicate copies on multiple devices that are unsynced. Right. Or to delete something from the cloud is requiring you to go to Amazon's Kindle manager, which is only available on a PC.
Right. No, that's a huge problem.
It also results in the fact that every time I do a fresh install of, OS 10 on my Mac and install the Kindle app, they treat it like a new occurrence of the app. And instead of just understanding that things are in the cloud and I, from time to time, need to pull them down from the cloud, instead what happens is, like, and when I look on my Kindle account online, I see, like, Robby's Mac 1, Robby's Mac 2, Robby's Mac 3.
Oh, that's so frustrating.
And I'm like, I don't, how am I supposed to know which one to push it to or which ones to delete?
I've come into that problem. It's very annoying.
Yeah, and so then it comes to this issue where now I've reached the maximum on some of my devices. For like this particular book, you've downloaded it on 5 devices. And I'm like, well, no, I've really downloaded it on 3 devices. You just think that the ones that I sold years ago are stale devices and give me no possible hope of figuring out which one is actually the one I'm currently using.
Yeah.
And it's not like it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, like it's inconsistent. It'll be Robby's Mac 1, Robby's Mac Pro, Robby's MacBook Air, Robby's MacBook Air 2. It's like, how do I know what is the one I'm actually currently using?
Yeah.
So it's a disaster, no matter which way you go.
Right.
So what do you do then? What do you do with a PDF that's a book where you can experience it with the tools of a book, like basic highlighting and notes, page turning?
Sure.
What do you use?
Personally, for me, I just like throw it in a directory on Google Drive. It's not ideal.
So this is one solution to the PDF problem is you just treat them like files and folders on a computer's hard drive. You sync them using Dropbox or...
I mean, honestly, that's the solution to everything. It's just not elegant.
The problem is that if I want to read that document, a PDF document is going to feel the same on pretty much any PC. But if I want to read that on my iPad, then Dropbox is not going to give me a different experience for reading a PDF book versus signing a document.
Right. No, I know. It's a problem. You're right. The experience of interacting with that PDF in one of these fix-all apps like Google Drive or Dropbox, right? It's never ideal because those companies can't provide the ideal experience for every single way you interact with a PDF, which goes back to your initial grievance, number 2, right? Is that a PDF is such a catch-all file type that you need a different way to interact with it depending on what, medium the PDF is capturing at that point in time.
Sure. So what is the ideal thing that we would want? What's the ideal PDF management tool? Because you're using PDFs for research more than I am, and also like in your profession, you're getting a much higher volume of PDFs in your workflow than I am. So what is your daily PDF desire, whether it's a workflow or an app?
See, I don't think I'm very high maintenance. I'm not asking a lot, which is why I'm so surprised and, quite frankly, indignant that you can't get a fix-all solution for even just these basic sets of needs. So, like I said, annotation has to be quick. I mean, I don't want to have to press 2 buttons before I can start writing. And to be quite frank, there's only... most of the apps I've used require, if I remember correctly, at least 2 clicks to something to start writing. You can imagine if I'm trying to write even just 6 comments a page, how annoying that is. Click, click, start writing. Click, stop writing. Move, scroll. Click, click, start writing. Click, stop writing, right? Mm-hmm. It's like tripling the amount of work it takes to annotate something, whereas if I was just using paper, I could just scribble, done. So... it's pretty frustrating.
So the management the file management end of it is not as important to you as much as the experience.
That's important. But I'm just getting. I'm starting from what I consider to be like space number one. Like this is so important. If annotating something like an article or a book or someone's form letter that they sent you, if editing it, if writing little scribbles or thoughts or underlines on it is 3 times more difficult than just doing the hard copy on a piece of paper, then why am I like? It's going to be hard for you to make that worth it for me. I mean, that's just almost insulting. Like I've paid money so that my life could get harder.
Yep.
I mean, that's really humiliating when you think about it.
What are some of the apps you've tried and how have they fallen short?
Well, I started probably like everyone else with the Adobe app. I think they call it PDF Reader.
I think it's called Acrobat Reader.
Acrobat Reader, that's right. And let's see, Acrobat Reader I still think makes annotating more difficult than it needs to be, for one.
Is the only way to sync your PDFs still through Adobe's proprietary cloud?
Last time I checked, yes, which is also pretty frustrating. In fact, I mean, what I end up doing sometimes, if I'm going to be using Acrobat Reader on my iPad, I actually just plug the iPad into my computer like it's 2007 and straight up, dump things onto it that way. So I think your original question was, what do I need it to do? What are my needs as a user? Right. So that's number one is, annotating and interacting with the PDF, by, editing it with text, circling and underlining.
Frictionless annotation.
It needs to be, pretty darn close to the ease and usability you get with a piece of paper. And there are maybe 2 apps I've used that come close to that.
And they are?
Ugh, you got me. I can't name them off the top of my head.
Describe them and I'll try.
Well, one of them had it down to a pretty good science because it relied on the difference between interacting with something with 1 finger and 2 fingers. And I think it used motions, which is a pretty good way to do it. So you could like swipe with 2 fingers and then just start writing and be done with it.
Okay.
It was pretty easy,
Sure.
I don't remember if it was like swipe with 2 fingers, if it was like just tap with 2 fingers, but they figured it out that like if I'm using a stylus, it's not that hard to just be like, right, blam, done. Like,
all right, you're going to research that later, and I'm going to put it in the notes of this podcast so that listeners can know the name of this app.
Yeah, I mean, they made it pretty close to frictionless.
I don't know which one you're thinking of. Okay, go on. What are a couple others?
Of my needs or apps? I mean,
apps that did not fulfill this need for you.
Almost every other PDF app I've used puts a lot of clicks in between me and easy annotation.
All right. Can I tell you the one I've landed on?
Sure, go ahead.
I don't mean to jump the gun.
No,
do you have more on your wish list?
Why don't you go?
Okay.
And then we'll,
yeah, my wish list is, I wish that I could have an app much like you're talking about, something more for productive purposes, like annotation.
Right.
Files, in other words. And I'd love for it to feel as crisp and easy to use as a piece of paper.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can come up with a good name for this. I mean, you have a really good grievance here. I'm in my head, I'm thinking like it's a combination problem. Mm-hmm. You need a combination of like 1 or 2 or 3 things. It has to both sync across your devices. A single file should be able to sync across your devices once you deploy it, right? Mm-hmm. And you should be able to interact with it in that same app. Right?
The interaction model for me, it has to be...
It should be, you should be able to interact with it.
A little bit different, or at least for me to choose for it to be different. Now, here's the problem. We don't think about this at all on PCs because everything is in a file or a folder somewhere. It's a file in the file library.
That's changing, though. I feel like PCs are becoming more appified.
Sure, absolutely.
In my view, not good. But go on.
Well, at least we're not losing the ability to do what we want with them.
Oh, yeah.
If there was truly a file system on something like an iPad where I could just put them in different folders, like here's a folder of my books, here's a folder of articles,
And then you can choose what application to open that file with.
Sure.
Perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
So that...
Instead, file storage has become dependent on the app.
Right.
Which opens up an enormous possibility for needless duplication. Which is the problem you're talking about that it results in.
Sure, which has been resolved to some extent in recent years, especially on the iPad now that it actually...
Really? Because that awesome app that you showed me, which is a good app in its own right, but it almost relies on needless duplication.
Okay, are you talking about documents?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is all about duplication.
So it doesn't have to be. And I actually
It kind of does.
You jumped me there. But
if you want to use it to solve your combination grievance.
Well, not quite. I've got it working out. And I wanted to actually use this as an opportunity to move towards what, I don't want to say what works for us each, but what have we settled for in the year 2015? For me, the app for iPad, Documents by the company Riedel or Redel, I don't know how it's pronounced. This app has solved a number of problems for me.
But you paid the extra little bit to be able to... who is the PDF person that they like to combine with their app?
Sure. Well, actually, they make one.
But you pay for it, right?
Sure. So Documents is a free app. And what it is it's a document. It's sort of a sandbox of documents that you can pull into your iPad. Now, their basic surface level model does duplicate documents. It has a section of the app called Documents, where anything you pull into it from another app is going to live in Documents as a duplicate copy in that app.
Right.
So all the things I don't want.
Already you're doubling.
Right. But they can link to services like Dropbox and Google Drive.
Sure.
So what you end up with...
That's where its value added is. That's what it does.
So I don't even really spend much time putting stuff in the local document playground. I pretty much link up my Dropbox, and then I pick a couple of folders where I keep PDFs. Like I do actually have a folder in Dropbox called Books. I have another one called, it's like signatures from, for like invoices or signatures of this document or articles clipped from the web in the form of a PDF. I sync all of those Dropbox folders to Documents app.
Right.
So that when I open them and annotate them and then close them, they're saved back to Dropbox.
Right.
I'm not creating a duplicate file and then editing that. When I click the X in the upper corner, it's already saved back to Dropbox. I can go on my Mac, go into that folder in Dropbox, open it up, and any annotations I did are there. Now,
your iPad has to be connected to the internet to do that, or you've got to be using data on it, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Or Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Now, Documents, that feature does require you to buy Riedel's $5 PDF Expert app.
Right.
Which I was going to say solves your problem of input because it's only one tap to start editing a document with a pencil tool.
Right.
And so what I love so much about the combination of these apps is if you have both installed, you don't even need to leave Documents to use the PDF Expert tools. Riedel has designed the app so that the tools show up in the Documents app.
Yeah.
And the Documents app can read Word files, Excel spreadsheets. It can play MP3s. Like it's just it's kind of like the Finder that the iPad doesn't have. And what's great about it is it's got a multi-tabbed interface, something that not a whole lot of PDF apps have, where you can just have multiple documents opened at once.
Right.
So it's solving all sorts of problems for PDFs, and it has a one-tap to start drawing tool, which is, to me, it's good enough.
Yeah, that's good.
It's great. When I go on a concert, on a field trip with my students, I load up and I put all my files in Dropbox, the parent sign-out sheets, the itinerary of the day. I just open them in multiple tabs in Documents.
Right.
The app Documents. And then, I have my itinerary open. And then when a parent comes to bring their kid home early, I just tap to the other tab.
Sure.
Tap the pencil icon, and they're ready to sign their kid out.
Right. I haven't seen this, but I think this would be the perfect solution to the one-tap kind of problem I've been talking about. A lot of apps these days can sense when a stylus is touching versus your finger, if I remember correctly.
True.
Why not just, if the stylus is touching, it's writing, and then you interact with everything else with fingers. That's just perfect, right?
It's okay. So, I mean, in short, it's really hard to implement that in a way that's meaningful across multiple different apps. Some companies like Evernote has a handwritten note app called Penultimate, and they have a proprietary stylus you can buy that does something kind of like that.
Yeah.
The app Paper by Company 53 has that proprietary pencil that you use, and it rejects your palm and lets you do all sorts of cool artsy stuff with it. Apple doesn't give these developers enough power to make those tools work system-wide.
Sure.
Unfortunately, until Apple makes a stylus, which who knows if they ever will, this is a problem.
Yeah.
But Documents is where I've landed. Other apps I've tried, I wrote some down here. PDFpen kind of does what Documents and PDF Expert does.
I think PDFpen was the app that I was talking about. They have a free version that I gave a shot at.
They don't, actually. Yeah. And it's unfortunately, PDFpen is a really great app, but it's riddled with bugs, and I've been really unhappy with it. It doesn't just work. I've never had a moment where Documents or PDF Expert has stopped working for me.
Oh.
They're just, always reliable.
Yeah.
They have really nice interfaces too. Like they're really simple. It's distraction free. You get to the annotation pretty quickly. Other things I mentioned I've tried, iBooks, Kindle. I just have ended up leaving my books in Dropbox and reading them in the Documents app.
Yeah.
Evernote is a place that I do store PDFs, and I store them there for two reasons. Reason number one is that it's just a duplicate copy of a PDF I've put in a file somewhere. It's just a backup copy. Evernote is a great place to just dump stuff. And the text with a premium account is all searchable. And sometimes that's an easier way to find something than digging around in files and folders. They have a pretty good app for annotation called Skitch, but it's not the one-tap experience you're looking for where you just start writing. Like it's a little bit, kind of like the whole Evernote experience is kind of summed up with good features, but at the cost of confusion and overcomplication.
Yep.
Another great app is Scannable, made by Evernote, and that actually allows your iPhone to be a really snappy camera for converting documents into text searchable PDF files. Yeah. And it does a really standout job. The only app I use on my iOS devices, like my iPad, where I quarantine PDFs into a separate place, is forScore.
Interesting.
Yeah, I use it because for me, I want to keep, I keep backup copies of all my sheet music in Dropbox and Evernote. But I also think that, I pull a copy down from the cloud into forScore so that I can use specifically musical tools.
Right.
For annotation.
No, and that makes sense. That's like kind of a use case where you want to have copies.
Yeah.
I mean, you brought up another place where I think duplication is a huge problem, and that's when you're scanning to create PDFs from a tablet or a phone, because that's a perfect example of a duplication problem. You scan it. The app you used to scan in the PDF keeps a copy, and then you open that copy in another app, which then creates a copy.
I let it slide. Here's why. Sometimes when you think about a document, you do in your mind think about what app you used to create it. So on the one hand, I wish I didn't have to think about what app which PDF is in. If I snapped a photo of a piece of paper on my desk and I'm looking for that document, and I'm not quite sure I know where it is in the Finder, but I'm pretty sure that I used PDFpen's scanner app to capture it.
Yeah.
It's easy to find it there.
But don't you think that it wouldn't be that difficult to add just a little button when the document's on its way out in the open with sort of marquee, right? So when you're going to open with, if you're in the scanning app, the app that you use to scan the document in, and then you want to interact with that document in your interaction app, the app that you're going to use to interact with that newly scanned document. When you go to open that document in the interaction app, wouldn't it be easy to just say, open with and delete here?
Yeah, I mean, some of these apps give you the option to not save a copy to the app.
Right.
Evernote's, Scannable app, which is my scanner of choice, gives you the option to just choose where it's going, and then it's done with it. It goes to Dropbox or wherever. Because Evernote is such a useful dump everything here kind of bucket of an app, I don't mind the fact that by default it scans a copy to Evernote. I just let it go to Evernote. If I want it in Dropbox, I'll add it there too. But I used to have this feeling like there can only be one copy of everything on my computer.
Right.
And I realized that's just not sustainable. Like,
sure.
You have to just get over that as a power user of any kind of tech. So I just let duplicates live in Evernote. It's fine.
Yeah.
Files and folders are a little bit these days more like for active projects, like things that I'm working on or that get edited once a year, or for keeping together various different file types, like a folder that represents a project that's full of PDFs, PowerPoint presentations, audio files. Like that's the power and flexibility of the traditional file system.
Right.
But Evernote's so good for just having copies of stuff. Like it's just sort of an archivist's dream.
Are there things that, we've talked about frictionless annotation, and we've talked about...
you still haven't told me what you've settled on. Like when you open up a PDF on your iPad.
See, it really just depends on what I'm doing, right? So if I'm doing music stuff, right, I'm going to open it up in my, the same music app you've been using for your tablet. Remind me again.
forScore.
Yeah, forScore, right? So if I'm if it's like a journal article, or like a short form, like a 15-page article, I'll either open it up in the standard free Adobe reader because it's still kind of a reliable free option to do that. Whereas, as you've pointed out, I think some of the other free PDF annotation apps out there are not reliable. They're just a little buggy and clunky.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, what was the other? I do use documents. And that's basically it. It's pretty much forScore and PDF, Adobe Reader, Adobe Acrobat Reader, right?
Yeah.
And documents. That's basically it. I haven't really found anything else that has like added enough value for me to bother, integrating it into my workflow or, learning its ecosystem or whatever.
Sure.
Have you found something else kind of extraneous?
No, there is sort of like a Swiss Army knife app for PDFs that I've been fitting into my daily
I remember
work.
seeing that one.
It's called Goodreader. And Goodreader is kind of a tool for this is like, down the rabbit hole now, but Goodreader can just do crazy edge case kind of stuff that I want to do.
Like what?
So there's an app for the iPad and iPhone called Workflow, and Workflow allows you to automate a series of actions in a way in which that can span across multiple different apps. So like you can create a workflow that when you tap a button to run the workflow, it turns on your camera and says, take a picture.
Right.
Take another picture. Take another picture. And then it takes those 3 pictures, turns them into a GIF, and then pulls up, a text message sheet so you can address it to someone.
Oh.
And then once you do that, it shares it to Facebook. Like you can just make it automate a series of actions.
Oh, that's cool.
So you can have, this is the, make GIF and share it with my wife in Facebook workflow.
Wow, that is really cool.
So certain third-party apps can certain things they're able to do can automatically be actions in workflow.
Right.
And a lot of the people who make these super like geeky power user apps have created a way to integrate their app. So Goodreader is like it has actions available in workflow.
Right.
One of which I've done is I've created, and I'm actually working on a blog post about this now. It's basically like an automated series of things that I do on my iPad before my first period class every day.
Right, yeah. I remember you describing this.
Sure, and so what it does is like one of the things I need to do is grab my seating charts, which are all different PDFs in Dropbox.
Right.
And then I really want to get them open, in fresh so I can start annotating them.
Right.
So because Goodreader is integrated with workflow, I can create a workflow that says, launch this URL, which is, basically my grade book for my first period class.
Sure.
And then look into Dropbox for the file called concert band seating chart, and then open it in Goodreader.
Right.
And then and then look for this other seating chart for my symphonic band in Dropbox, but open it in Goodreader.
Right.
And so this is just like, not something that any other PDF reader I know of can do.
Yeah.
And this is a case in which I love the fact that in Goodreader, it's duplicating the documents.
Sure.
Because it's by doing that, it's giving me a fresh copy.
Yeah.
And what I do with the fresh copy is I run this nerdy script on my home computer that basically looks to that place where the newly generated seating charts are.
Right.
And it grabs them and then turns them into Evernote searchable PDFs.
Right, right.
So it's a super nerdy way of saying, let me tap one button each morning to get my seating charts into Goodreader.
Yeah.
Where I will, scribble on them and take notes. And then on my Mac at home, it's just shoving all that stuff into Evernote.
Right.
All behind the scenes automatically.
Wow.
So when I have a parent-teacher conference and a parent says, why is my son getting a C in your class?
Right.
I can show them all of this archived data in my Evernote journal called seating chart data.
Right.
And then I can show them all the times that their child's name has, like, in red pen scribbled on it, like, late to class,
right,
talking, not participating.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty powerful tool.
No, that is really powerful. I was going to say, what that tool that you've created is like a very specific and customizable kind of generative tool. It allows the user to design workflows kind of that uniquely serve that user's interests, right? In a way that like building a single feature into an app never could. So that's awesome. I was going to say I've been a little bit unfair to the PDF world because if you're willing to just suck it up and pay somewhere between $40 to $70, you can buy these like really incredible ecosystems for specifically, I think, for academics who live and breathe PDFs. And I'm sure you've seen some of these apps.
One of them is for Mac anyway, is DEVONthink.
Uh-huh.
Have you heard of that one?
Yeah, that was, I think there were like 3 or 4 that are kind of solidifying themselves as the industry standard. But if you're used to working with anywhere between 90 to 400 PDFs a year or something, even like a month. A lot of these folks need hundreds of PDFs a month easily, right? There are apps that have really streamlined all of that. I just haven't choked up the money, and I think that part of this grievance is really just a meta grievance about why doesn't this stuff just work out of the box if you buy a tablet? Like, if I were going to buy a tablet today, I would budget in to buying a tablet money to get PDF management just working, because it just doesn't work out of the box. And that's part of the grievance that I have, is like, I really do think these problems, they're not as bad as I whine about them every day if you're willing to just tack on, $50 to $100 worth of apps, pricey apps, onto the price tag of your tablet, period.
You're so right. And the thing about this is, like, no one has to think about this on a PC. Like,
right.
Most PCs come with a default PDF reader.
Oh, yeah.
That's, first of all, pretty good.
Yeah.
Like Preview app on the Mac.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's
the
great.
Stuff I can do with Preview.
Why that app is not on iPad drives me off the wall. And then also the fact that, like, on a Mac, I can close that. If I need the power tools, I can close that file, right-click it, and open it in Adobe Acrobat.
Oh, yeah.
Where I can do all the power stuff,
save
it to the same place, and then it's just that way now.
Yep.
So why, the mobile devices are never going to do this.
No. I think there was once a time when if you buy an Apple product, it's going to take care of the foundational functions that you expect that product to do right out of the box. And I think we've entered the point where it's like, no, there's going to be third parties that are going to charge you an arm and a leg to do the stuff you thought you should be able to do right out of the box with an iPad. I think that's just where we are today. PDF management is one of them.
A sad note.
Yeah.
To end on.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, our episode was kind of about criticizing the status quo in PDF management. And
to some degree discussing how we manage that problem. I'm reasonably happy. Like, with now with
the documents combination you've got going is good.
It's pretty good. It really does bring it to a level where I don't have to think about it so much.
And you don't have to duplicate.
Right.
So kudos there. I mean, it's definitely worth choking up the $5 for their extra PDF app.
Yeah, I think it's the best one on the App Store for the iPad. And one of the cheapest paid apps for PDFs.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't happy with Penultimate. I tried it out for a while.
Yeah, they recently did an update within the past few months that really ruined it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I did fork over the money to get really invested in the paper stuff. I mean, they don't do PDFs.
Sure.
But for note-taking, I much prefer them over Penultimate.
Yeah.
But I bought their pen. I mean, like, I paid $40 for their pen.
I know.
That's like 8 apps or something.
Yeah, it's their business model now. They're doing it smart. I mean, even me, someone who's looking to the possibility of an Apple-branded stylus in the next couple months,
right?
Even I bought that pencil, knowing I might buy something better in the future.
It just kills me.
I know.
Kills me.
It's a really good pencil.
No, it is. This is like something as basic as note-taking. You have to really buy into a third-party product for on the tablet. I mean, that's not very Apple. Oh, you want to take notes on your tablet? Well, that's kind of weird. We're going to let you buy someone else's stuff to do that. We don't really...
And while I think that Apple is really great at marketing their products and really does a great job of selling you on the feel, like all of their ads are about, like the feeling you get when you use their products.
Yeah.
Appropriately so. But like I think that this is for me, and maybe the rest of the country doesn't feel this way, but like for me as a power user, I do appreciate the Microsoft underdog approach, which is in some of their ads in past years, basically just saying, you need a device for getting work done. Here's what the iPad doesn't do. Here's what we do.
Right.
And to their credit, Windows tablets are still not really doing anywhere close to as good as iPads, but you can expect a PDF to operate on a Windows tablet just like on a Windows PC.
Right. It just might like affect your eyesight with its ugliness.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should do a follow-up to this where I've forked over the money for an awesome, academic, can handle high throughput PDF volume.
I would love that.
And then, because I think that would just solve all my problems, but then it just made my iPad that much $60 more expensive. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. I can't disagree there.
All right. Well, to be continued.
This has been fun.
Complaining is fun.
It's my favorite.